All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to be diving into Ethereum, the big merge, but more importantly, how is DeFi going to be able to withstand what could be a very interesting scenario playing out? We're going to break down a bunch of different potential scenarios for you guys, give you some insights on maybe what you should be doing with ERC20 and all of that. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Let's get into it today. Before we get started, though, of course, we want to thank our sponsor. That is iTrust Capital. If you're looking at long-term holds, which I think right now is one of the better bets when you look at whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or some of the other tokens, there's a handful of tokens that are available over there on iTrust Capital. You can trade within your IRA. It's very easy to do, very low fees, no fees to actually onboard, and best of all, you can get a $100 funding reward. Oh, I should say, reward for just signing up. And that's not if you even fund the account. You can actually sign up, start learning a little bit about the IRA component, and take a look and see if it's for you. Then put a deposit in, get that $100, and it's a good deal. So make sure and click the link below, and we'll get into all that. Make sure, by the way, get your questions in over on the side. I know you guys will probably have a lot happening around what to do with Ethereum, how to play this. We do have a live stream coming up today at 3 with Gareth. We will break down Gareth Soloway. We will break down the charts. We'll take a look at where ETH is going because there is some movement right now, especially with Bitcoin bouncing below 19,000. So a lot happening. Let's get into a couple of stories here I want to focus on, and that is really kind of the preparation approach of how you should maybe address your ERC20 tokens that you're holding, whether it's on wallets, maybe you're holding on in cold storage, scenarios like that. Hopefully we're going to answer all those questions for you today. But experts weigh in on the Ethereum vulnerabilities after the merge, and really kind of after DeFi is going to get redefined here. I want to focus on a few things that are in this article. Aave's community proposed a temporary suspension of the ETH lending before the merge. In fact, that's going to occur. Potential use of high ETH utilization, which obviously would result in a lot of liquidations, which would be hard or impossible, and annual percentile yields reaching negative figures. So there's a lot of scenarios that could be playing in here. Also, the United States, the FBI, has issued a fresh warning for investors on DeFi platforms, which they again have been targeted with about 1.6 billion in exploits, which I have a feeling we're probably going to see a lot of exploits attempted during this merge. So there is going to be some scenarios, I think, that people need to be very cautious on what's happening with your ERC20 tokens as well as your Ethereum tokens as a whole. The ban of ETH privacy tool, Tornado Cash, this, of course, really kind of put a little bit of people on blast of whether or not this could actually happen with Ethereum in general. Could we see some sort of censorship with Ethereum of maybe not being able to access certain aspects of the proof of stake system? That, along with what happened right here, which is the DeFi protocol shuts down after the Rary Fuse hack. This, of course, was Babylon Finance, which announced that it will shut down after months of trying to recover from the negative momentum. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility for some of these different platforms to really start to run into some scenarios that could be very, very catastrophic for the ETH merge. Now, we're not saying this could be a bad thing. What I always look at is what are my safe options to still prepare for what might happen if there is a pause, if there is something that gets maybe not completely over on the transfer, and what happens when we have a lot of people, remember ETH being the biggest ecosystem out there, what happens when we have a lot of people trying to do things with their ERC20? Here's Bobby Ong, his tweet stream, which I thought was really a good one. Let me kind of highlight a few of these because he really goes into just some things that you could do, and he kind of goes into some steps. One is getting the ETH proof of work tokens. You must be first hold ETH on a wallet that supports the fork, so you guys got to make sure you're in there. Best would be, now he is saying full custody of your ETH on a hardware wallet. If you're holding ETH on an exchange, your exchange may or may not have the fork tokens. We talked a little bit about that last week, and I think for most of the people watching our shows, you're most likely on a major exchange, which will, of course, support those tokens. If you're in a side exchange or a smaller exchange, maybe this is the time to, and you don't maybe have hardware wallets, maybe this is the time for you to do that. To move over, which is a good possibility that I think that makes it easier. His number 2 was bring all your tokens back to the ETH mainnet. You will not be getting any ETH proof of work on your ETH held on Optimism, Arbitrum, Polygon, Avalanche, or any other layer 2 scaling solution. So make sure and bring them back into the mainnet before the merge. And then this one right here was number 4, and it was the one I really took notice to, and that is removing liquidity from DeFi protocols. And you will not be getting any ETH proof of work tokens for ETH that are being used to provide liquidity. So that's going to be interesting because that could really put a lot of strain, obviously, within the DeFi protocols themselves, which I think is why we're seeing so many of these platforms start to kind of change the plans in which they're going to manage how some of this goes. So there could be a liquidity crunch on DeFi protocols as more folks kind of get in and do this. So just be aware that is another possibility here. I want to kind of also showcase Ethereum Classic because this, of course, has been pumping over the last couple of days. And Ethereum Classic, this was at 26% at the time of this article. And that, of course, has gone up since then as miners switch ahead of the ETH merge. My big question is going to be how the Ethereum miners will potentially manage the ETH merge. Will they, because remember, they're holding a lot of Ethereum, will they use something, ETH as a liquidity scenario to possibly fund another fork of Ethereum? All of that is going to be up in the air, and really kind of what we see right now with this much movement on ETH Classic, there's much more to pay attention here than I thought there was when the merge occurs. In other words, we could have some split factions that really kind of show up. But as you can see, ETH Classic pumped 26% last 24. They're making the switch. The network hash rate for ETH Classic has now more than doubled since mid-July. And this is an all-time high. So that in itself, you should take note. Those are the kind of scenarios that I think with what has been happening and what has been kind of leaning into, and we talked about this a little bit with Sue Ennis from Hut 8 earlier last week about what the potential is for ETH Classics and some other tokens that were true still proof of work versus going the proof of stake route could end up playing in a very advantageous way. Another thing is that they argued that the new fork went against decentralization and what ETH had originally set out to do, so stop things being manipulated by individual groups or people. And that's another argument that I think is a valid one. It's one that a lot of people have been looking at this merge as potentially creating a much more centralized ETH. All of this, I think, is still yet to be proven one way or another, both from a decentralized standpoint as well as a centralized standpoint. So I think it's up in the air as we start to see the transitions actually occur. Their argument is, viable, but at the same point, the potential here, I think, long-term is real. Now, this is where it gets a little bit sketchy in terms of how to consider some things that could happen. And there's a lot of things that, when you look at the kind of that trickle-down effect, the domino effect of what happens when a major token takes a setback. And we'll kind of explain this. This is coming from Evan6 Twitter account, and he kind of broke it down like this. He says, I think most people underestimate the potential chaos from the merge and the DeFi component. Max ETH borrow utilization could be at play here. Minimal liquidity everywhere because there will be so many people either holding or not in a position to where they can get a sale off because of the restrictions that will come both from wallets, will come from the exchanges, and then bridges obviously turning off everywhere, exchanges halting deposits and withdrawals, exchanges possibly going down from a load based on it because of the transaction request. And then obviously we're talking about high gas, which again will start to set back the whole transaction model of where this is going. Remember that just the merge going to ETH2 does not preclude us from high gas, nor does it really preclude us from a congestion within transactions because of the fact that this is really just more of a proof of work model that gives us the ability for, one, better tokenomics, and then two is the ESG side of things from a true proof of work. So that in itself, I think, is still a very strong measure for the future of ETH and what it means. Now, if you look at the future of ETH, you have to look at staking pools, and staking pools are very interesting right now. When you look at this article here, it breaks down staking pools and who runs the largest ones. And this is an intriguing aspect of where all of the ETH is. And I want to kind of just jump down to a few things. This was as of Friday. This was about 422,000 unique validators, bunch, 22.3 billion worth of Ethereum, 13.5 million ETH, obviously, staked on the Beacon chain. And 30% of the staked ETH is controlled by Lido, 15% by Coinbase, Kraken, and other, 7% at Binance. I'm going to zoom up on that. More than 60% of staked Ethereum is sitting within 4 entities. That's not safe, in my opinion. Understand the implications. Think of staking pools as real estate kind of investment trusts or a REIT. Imagine if you were dealing with 60% of all REITs, in other words, housing. Imagine what that would look like in the open market if we were to see some pressure on that, especially being controlled, because obviously if you can control all the housing, you get to control all the output, gas, transaction fees, all those kind of things that can happen right here within basically 4 facilities. So it's why staking pools obviously have drawn so much attention. Single entities, back to the article here, single entities controlling large groups of validators undermines the idea of security through decentralization. And this is a good argument, and it is one that I think a lot of people need to consider if we are looking at Ethereum being a true ultimate position for decentralization. It will be very interesting to see how all of this really plays out. Lido Finance, 4.2 million ETH. The liquid nature of tokens means that ETH depositors receive staked ETH, and then of course they can sell, trade, and lend out staked while their ETH remains locked up with Lido. Coinbase holding 2 million, Kraken at 1.1 million. These are ETH tokens. And then 904,000 ETH right there, if you can imagine that, over on Binance. So again, could it be a scenario that we see so much DeFi chaos occurring that we could see a lot of people in doing some very interesting things that maybe they normally would not do when they're transacting in ETH? And I'd kind of like to get you guys' feedback, what your plan is with your Ethereum and your ERC20, because this goes into the extension of ERC20. We're going to be doing a breakdown on USDC and Binance USD, BUSD. The reason is because USDC being ERC20 base, what does that do to the potential of USDC and the potential of Binance starting to shift away from that? We're going to do a full video breakdown on that, so be watching out for that one. But I'd love to get your feedback on how you guys are managing your ETH during this time. Make sure and drop some of the stuff over in the comments if you want to kind of look at it. And then we'll definitely get into some questions here. Here, of course, is the latest chart on Lido. And if you kind of look at when UST depegged, and I want to kind of zoom in on that just a little bit right there. Yeah. Right here, UST depegged. And as you can see, this is essentially what happened on staked ETH after that period of time, because we were moving. And this is a scenario right now, 7.2 billion. Solana holding at 139.1 million. So not even in the ballpark. So this is a big concern, I think, as we look at DeFi overall, and could be a very, very bad situation for DeFi as a whole, especially around where this may come to in the short term. Now, with all that, you have to look at regulation and maybe what this could play into, because this, again, might play out some scenarios here that really showcase some of the weaknesses within the DeFi system. And if you look at this article here, regulations where U.S. regulators should draw the line. There's a few things here that are interesting. I'll zoom up on that for you guys. This was a leaked copy of a draft bill. This was back in June, showed some of the key areas for concern for regulators. The draft bill paid special focus on user protection, intention of eliminating anonymous projects, and then the bill also required a crypto platform for service provider to legally register in the U.S., whether it was a DAO or a DeFi protocol. So again, this could only add fuel to the fire if we in fact get some DeFi protocols that have some struggle times, or if users end up not getting the full exposure of what's going to happen in terms of the transaction when the merge occurs. So that in itself could start to really cause a little bit of kerfuffle, I think, in the policymaker side of things. So here in this article it says, I think the point of the policymakers we're trying to get across is that they'll make it very difficult for developers, users of protocols that completely obfuscate transaction history, and that they're willing to act swiftly. Again, back to what could this do to DeFi in the long term. This is one of the biggest events in the history of crypto. And the fact that it is so integrated into so many DeFi protocols could reveal some very interesting scenarios. Now, it could go one way or the other. One way, perfect, no problems. The other way, showcasing kind of where the king has no clothes. And at that point, I think we end up into just more firing and ammunition from legislators. The concerns of regulators around the user protection are understandable, obviously, but experts believe that this really couldn't come across as an innovation and progress inhibitor, which I agree with. You know, there are risks that are at will, and I think we've seen this across all forms of innovation in technology before. And before it was kind of let run. They let innovation run wild, and look at where we are today. We have probably one of the most advanced societies out there, being the United States, and really kind of chartered the way in terms of how the internet would be utilized for e-commerce, you know, remote working, you name it. A lot of those companies were built and around the innovation that occurred. So I think that's a good argument that would really start to hold up what Web3 might look like. And obviously ERC20 is going to be a big, big part of that. All right, another one that you need to watch out for is Ledger. Now, this is where it gets a little bit dicey for me. And I'm a Ledger user, full disclosure, but I am looking at moving my ERC20 assets off of my Ledger, and I'll explain to you why and what that may mean. So let's look at a couple of things that Ledger is stating. Your ETH assets will remain on their accounts throughout the merge. You don't need to take any action. Obviously, don't share your 24-word password. If you are getting exploits, people saying, hey, you're not going to get your proof of work if we don't get your access to your wallet, don't fall for those kinds of scenarios. So scams, watch them closely. The other thing that I want to kind of zoom in on here that they're talking about is we strongly do not recommend transacting while the merge is taking place. So if you do decide to stay there on your Ledger devices with your ERC and your ETH, then absolutely just shut down all transaction and wait it out, just kind of like a hurricane. The other thing that is interesting is right here, number 4. What does pausing Ethereum services mean? This means sending ETH, sending NFTs, and then sending ERC20 tokens. So any of those ERC20s that you hold on your Ledger, if you were trying to vacate them for whatever reason, whether we get a spike in the price and some of the other tokens follow, or we see a mass sell-off and we see an absolute tunneling, if somebody might be trying to get out of it, at that point, you'd pretty much be stuck and have to live through the aftermath of where ETH would be. So there is a lot happening here, and I would recommend that you really kind of do a lot of research here. Remember, when we do these market movers like this, the idea behind these is real simple. We give you a whole bunch of data, facts, information, as well as maybe some of our own stuff, and that including sentiment, all that good stuff. And it is really designed to get you on your mission going against your portfolio. Maybe you're not even exposed to ERC20 and Ethereum, so that changes things a lot. But if you are heavily exposed, including USDC, because remember, USDC could still and is still an ERC20 token, so that's something that you will not be able to move. So that's another scenario. A good strategy that I'm taking is looking at maybe vacating some USDC, maybe for Binance, going to the BUSD and possibly into other tokens that are non-ERC20 in the short term before the merge occurs. So again, obviously you need to get ready for that. Another thing that's happening right here is FTX, of course, is halting ETH deposits and withdrawals on Arbitrum, Solana, and obviously Binance during the merge. So there's all of that. There's a couple of things here I want to feature here. Is Ethereum devs promise no downtime during the merge, one of the most anticipated upgrades. Even though if they decide to take proactive measures to ensure the safety of investor funds, I think that's good. Crypto exchanges, obviously FTX announced to halt Ether transactions on secondary blockchains until the September upgrade concludes. So until it's over. And who knows when that will actually happen, because of the fact that we could see a pause, we could see a little bit of a hiccup. We just don't know really the effect of this. You guys know, I've been a software developer and managed software for a long time in the tech sphere. And one of the things that always happens when you end up trying to ship that last version, your final out of beta, is one of the most difficult steps to take in shipping a ready for market product, especially in software. Even if you're willing to ship it with bugs, a lot of things can still happen during that process of transitioning over from that last, final checklist. So just be aware. There's a lot of things happening here that could really kind of get interesting for sure. Despite the explanation, FTX chose to suspend deposits and withdrawals until the merge is finished and the networks are stable. This kind of breaks down Arbitrum, which goes off on September 7th at Tripolot UTC, Solana, the wormhole on ETH, September 15th, Binance Smart Chain BSC on September 15th also. And then also note that FTX reserves the right to update any of these at will. So you could get changes in the middle of this. So just be careful if you are trying to make some changes in what you're doing with your ETH overall. Not to mention that we've also got Aave halting ETH loans as Ethereum Bellatrix, obviously the merge upgrade goes live. And it did go live without any problems. So that's a good sign. I think that is a good sign. Paris upgrade will be next. And obviously that one will be the final one before the merge occurs. But interesting stuff. So they are pausing loans for ETH right now. The community voted in favor of the decision in light of Ethereum's upcoming proof of stake upgrade. The protocol also has recorded a higher loan utilization rates leading up to the merge. Aave's decision came, of course, right before Bellatrix, and this was the first of two stages that we know about for all this. So good stuff to be aware of, and obviously this is a big one. One of the other things that I always watch, as you guys know, is where are the whales and what are the whales doing? Here is one right here, crypto news. Ethereum whale abruptly moves over 102,000 in ETH. That's in the ETH tokens themselves. Here's why. And there are a couple of things that you can look at here. 64,000, that's about 100 million. You can look at it two ways. It can either go the route of, hey, I just want to get it on and I want to, maybe he's diversifying, meaning I want to put some over here and some over here. Reasonable, and one in an exchange. Could be a variety of that nature. The other thing that could be happening here is a preparation for a sale or a liquidity, or the potential to sell right before they shut down the transactions to where you could go into something that is non-ERC20. There's a lot of different strategies that are at risk here and really could be playing into, I think, the future of what's going to happen in a very short period of time. As I said, I'd love to get your feedback on what you guys are planning to do with your ETH, and we'll bring up a few on the show for sure. Just as a reminder, we'll go over here to the ETH Countdown, and let's just take a look at where we are right now. 8 days, 12 hours. This, of course, is the one on CoinMarketCap, so everybody can go to it. Just click your token, and there's a big blue ribbon there. You can kind of click onto that. I would keep this up because this is going to continuously fluctuate with what will happen on the merge, because we may see times either extend and or shorten that could happen here. So there's a lot of variables here that play into all this stuff. As I said, guys, make sure and hit like on the video. This is one of the things that really helps our algorithm, but best of all, it lets us know these are the kind of breakdowns that you guys are interested in. We will be revealing the current CPI data. We'll take a look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, all that good stuff at our 3 o'clock live here and just coming up soon with Gareth. So make sure and stick around for that. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure and do so now. Hit that little icon, the bell. That'll give you notifications when we do go live, stuff like that, all that good stuff. I love it. All right, here we go. Let's get into some stuff. Paul is even spreading FUD about Ledger. That's a good one. You know, I am probably the biggest lover of Ledger out there. So, and they're not a sponsor of our channel one way or the other, but I like the product. It's very easy to use, and it's definitely one that I feel safe with, especially around Bitcoin. Right now with ERC20, there's just a lot of things that can happen, and I'm always in a position where I'm safe than sorry. So, and again, that goes back in my whole mentality of what and how I deal with investing as a whole, which is very conservative, as you guys probably know. I do get out there on the edge, of course, with a certain portion of my portfolio. I do jump into a lot of degening especially when it comes to gaming and metaverse, but for the most part, I'm staying pretty tight on this one overall. Let's get to a poll real quick, and then we'll take some questions for sure. Are you worried about the possible ETH merge failures or liquidity problems amongst DeFi and exchanges? Yes, very worried. Much higher than I thought. That's good. That's good that you guys are worried. 100% safe, not a many. And then many people are just like, hey, that means probably non-ETH holders. So that's a pretty interesting number right there, because I think when we look at the whole aspect of what Ethereum will look like and could be in the next few days, it's going to be interesting to see where the market goes. And when we get on with Gareth, we'll get a chance to see what's happening. All right, so here we go. Let's go, Jeff. I'm literally watching the crypto market drop in real time and getting alerts from all my platforms. Here we go again. And again, we've been talking about this for quite some time. We would see another drop, and this could be the time. This could be pre-ETH merge. Many people have kind of pointed at that, but remember, ETH had this nice little run up to around 16, almost 1700 today. So very interesting stuff. Matic, I'm watching closely. Remember, I'm looking for new entry points on some of these. So there are some potentials here, and especially Bitcoin right now could be a really interesting safe haven. Where are you going to move your ETH to? All right, so crypto, Steve-O. So there's a couple of strategies some people can take. We've got guys in the crypto pit that are talking about taking a move over to Robinhood. There are some limitations there. You can only move out 5K in crypto per day, I believe it is. So there are some limitations there. But there are also, if you trust FTX, or if you like Binance, or you're into Coinbase, whatever those are, go into if I were moving my ETH, most likely will, I'd be going into an exchange that I feel comfortable with, one that I could get to it, or that if I had to sell it to USD, I could. That's another advantage. The other aspect to this, and this is only on a Hail Mary kind of scenario, the other aspect on ERC20, maybe even on USDC, is maybe flip it over to Binance, go over to BUSD. That's a potential. And if I know Tether, not necessarily one of my favorites, Tether could be an alternative. I would diversify USDC just a little, just so I know. And if you had Tether on your ledger, this might be a scenario where you start to look at that as well. David Lee, if I leave my ETH on Coinbase Pro, will it automatically upgrade it? Yes. They are going to be one that has proven, I mean, FTX, there's a whole list. If you go to the Ethereum Foundation, there's a whole list of exchanges that have got the proof of work and proof of stake merge validation in place. So they'll basically replace the tokens you have that are proof of work with proof of stake tokens, and they'll airdrop them into your wallet. So that's how it works. Let's see here. Dean Carter, give us your thoughts on ADA. Man, ADA's falling, of course, like most of the altcoins right now. Again, you got the Vasil upgrade happening later this month. Could benefit if ETH stumbles. It, along with Solana and a handful of others, maybe Avalanche, which both of which had a little bit of a run here recently, and then are obviously correcting right now as we speak. And I think BNB has become underrated now for sure. Well, you guys have heard me talk about BNB quite a bit. I hold a lot of BNB. I like it. It's a great tool for anything on the Binance Smart Chain. And it's a great one, I think, if you are looking at alternative strategies in your crypto portfolio as a whole. It's one that is kind of like ETH. To me, BNB has a lot of similarities in the sense that it's a great utility, but it also has great flexibility into a lot of projects. So a lot there. Baylor Bear. Wow, Baylor Bear, Waco, Texas. How about that? You know, you guys know I'm from Texas. That's my home state, so I know the Baylor Bears well. Super Chat, thanks coming in for that. Luna Classic question. It's up almost 300% in a month. Market cap over 2. Won't touch Luna C. Sorry, just not going to happen. Say bye to Helium. Well, listen, Helium is struggling right now. They have, even after this situation last week, we did a video on Helium around the shift of going into the Solana network. There was a lot of pushback from the community. I think the problem with Helium right now is there are some issues that are being raised by the community, and it is one that we're watching very closely. We're trying to get the Helium team on to really kind of address that. And you guys can help. All you have to do is tweet. Make sure and tweet the project. Make sure and come on Paul's show. We'd love to do a deep dive. And many times we always try to get answers on these kind of things. Kind of like the situation we had Arbitrum on not too long ago. And this is the problem that I find with a lot of projects, is they are not upfront with what's going on. They could have given us the kind of a heads up as to what they were doing, because they're activating this on the 7th. Scenario, and we just had them on last week, and they didn't mention a thing about the scenario with Arbitrum. So I just, sometimes point blank answers, we just don't get them. We try really hard to get as much as we can for sure. McFarlane, Paul, which exchange, let me see here, which exchange, McFarlane, I lost his, there he goes. Okay, which exchange do you think would have the most liquidity to sell ETH proof of work? That's a good question. I would look at a combination, probably FTX. And if you're doing small trades, you guys are going to think I'm crazy. Maybe Robinhood, because of your small trades. If you're bigger trades, I would go FTX, probably Coinbase second, and then maybe Gemini on that side too. I don't know. There's a couple that you could really kind of fall into here. There's a lot of different strategies, I think, of how and where that may occur. But which ones are you in right now would probably be the bigger question. Applicum. Bitcoin dominance is so low. Ben Cowan is always wrong. First is lengthening cycles, and it's Bitcoin dominance is 60. Yeah, this is something that we've talked about often, is that the likelihood of Bitcoin dominance coming back to anything of the historical level, only a major meltdown would cause that to occur. And the diversity of the crypto market just doesn't really allow for that. I think there's going to continue to be a lot of diversity in the market for sure. So there's a lot happening there in terms of dominance. I do watch it. It is something that I think is going to play out as we see the market mature. And it's one that, as you guys know, I am, and we'll do a whole video on Bitcoin and what my theory is long term, because I do believe Bitcoin at some point starts to run into problems. I know you guys are going to go, what? But yeah, but we're talking about years, possibly a decade out, but still the potential here, if you're a long-term investor, strategies are very important as you play this out. So it's a big one for sure. All right, so I like it, Delta 9. How is Paul so calm when Bitcoin is dumping like this? Because guys, when Bitcoin is dumping like this right here, it only means another millionaire is being minted right now. Another millionaire is being minted because they're getting into Bitcoin at maybe a lower price than they ever have been in before, and they're a long-term holder, and they're going to play this out, whether it's the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, but we will see an unbelievable move here. And remember, our numbers on Bitcoin, we'll talk a little bit about it here in a bit with Gareth, but our numbers on Bitcoin are still holding at around the 14 to 13K. That's my number. Whether we see the 10K, I know a lot of analysts have pushed to that. We've had a lot of macro guys on our show that have pushed down to 10. I just don't know that there's and there are some scenarios that it could happen. fail, big problems with the FOMC into this month, and then further pressure from the Fed into the fall, bad jobs numbers, real estate, all those kind of things happening, kind of that perfect storm. Yes, that's a possibility. But at the same time, we're going to see major changes in the traditional markets as well. We'll do a full video on all that good stuff. We've got a lot of stuff lined up for the week, so make sure and stick to us this week. As I said, hit the bell because it's going to give you notifications. If you are listening to us over on the podcast after this live stream, best thing to do is get over here to the YouTube channel. This is where it all happens, right here. It's where we do all the breakdowns, the analysis, the CEO interviews, our sentiment data, right here on YouTube. Of course, if you guys want to hit me up, it is out there on Twitter at Paul Barron. Be careful because there's a lot of scammers and duplicate accounts, especially on Instagram, even TikTok. It's official Paul Barron on TikTok, and just at Paul Barron on Instagram. So just be watch out. Try to stay as close to my name as possible for any of those. And soon we're going to be doing our 3 o'clock. So stay tuned around for that. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.